Hey everyone, welcome to PunkCast. My name is William Maxwell. I'm a student of Web3 and the owner of Punk7335. CryptoPunks are 10,000 uniquely generated characters stored permanently on the Ethereum blockchain. No punk is the same. This is a show dedicated to celebrating the punks behind the punk. My hope for this podcast is that we capture the essence of the punk culture, elevate the brand and the individual behind the punk. One last thing. Projects discussed on the show is not financial advice. Crypto and NFTs are a volatile and risky asset class. Please always do your own research. Other than that, let's go.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of PunkCast. And today we're back with Punk7335. He's a clean punk with 3 Atties, smile, pirate eye patch, and the iconic orange knitted cap. In real life, he is an ex-high frequency trader. I think that's what HFT stands for, and entrepreneur. He's also currently building Gondi.xyz, an NFT lending protocol. Please welcome my knitted cap brother to the show, 0xEnd. End, how are you, man?
Hey, Max. Doing great. Thank you very much for having me. I'm a huge fan of your podcast and everything that you're doing within the community.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. Why don't we kick it off real easy, man? Why did you come up with a handle 0xEnd?
So they're actually my initials. I still remain somewhat anonymous, but I always liked that they were actually a word. So I decided to pick it up when having to basically pick a handle.
And tell us about yourself, a little bit more about your background, where you grew up, what you studied, and how you sort of landed up into the space of crypto.
Cool. Yeah. So I guess starting from the beginning, I was born and raised in Argentina back in, 2010. Applied to college, was fortunate enough to get a scholarship and get into one of the good schools in the US, where I did computer science and math. After graduation, so this is 2014, I still didn't really know much about crypto. We played a little bit with BTC mining back in school, just leveraging free electricity back in the day. But it didn't really click. I would say it was just messing around. Finished college, went to a company called Palantir, where I worked in the machine learning team for 3 years, which was a blast, different kind of projects. And fast forward to 2017, late 2016, I guess I was just chatting with a friend, heard about BTC, and at that point ETH was around as well. Decided to read a bit more about it, see where things were, and kind of one thing led to another. Started spending more and more time on it, and around April 2017, decided to leave Palantir. Started a high-frequency trading firm focused on crypto. Basically run that between end of 2017 and late 2021. And around that time, I basically was getting a little bit burned out. I was not as excited as I used to be about purely high-frequency trading. And a good friend of mine, someone that I've known for a very long time, had just sold his previous company and was getting into the crypto space. And after exploring a few different ideas, we decided to get started with Gondi, which is what I've been doing for the past 2 years now.
Awesome. There's so many things that I'd like to sort of break down a little bit further. Argentina, Buenos Aires, I love that place. What was it like growing up in Argentina? I think everyone keeps talking about, all of this inflation and all of those things that were sort of happening in Argentina. Can you speak to me a little bit more about that? I guess what your experience was with, inflation and I guess that whole experience firsthand.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess growing up, I had a blast. I loved it here. I love the culture. I love the society here. And I guess I wasn't really aware of a different country or how things were somewhere else. So I grew up with inflation, and that was just the way things worked. Back in 2001, we had this massive crisis. Suddenly, the currency devaluated 4x within a matter of weeks, and there was a lot of social unrest. And basically, every I would say probably 5 to 6 years, we get a new crisis and things get rebuilt. And I think that probably because of it, I think it's a fairly resilient culture and society. So basically, just one that adapts to change and adversity. I guess it would be a nice story if I say, hey, when I read about Bitcoin, it definitely clicked with me, and that's why I got into it. And suddenly these non-inflation, or I guess a currency with a predefined emission schedule would click immediately. It didn't. Honestly, I was just very excited early on about other things. But going back to your question, it was great. I loved growing up in Buenos Aires.
Mate, I think I was just telling you before the show as well. I went to a friend's bachelor's party in Buenos Aires, and I remember at the time, I think it was like 30 pesos to the Australian dollar, something like that. And I've just Googled right now, what is it now? It's like 540 pesos to the Australian dollar.
I, I'm
That is insane. That's like, that's almost like 20x, 20x inflation. That's insane. And I think at the time as well, when we had to change money, we didn't go to the banks because the banks weren't giving us good rates out of the ATMs, and so we would like walk down these alleyways with these random dudes and literally just handing over, bags of cash in return for certain US dollars. It was like the weirdest thing. It was a bit dodgy, but like it worked. Like it was legit. So you're laughing. Is that normal or?
yes. So I guess like to put things in context. So when I was more like back, I guess like during my childhood, the US dollar and the peso was pegged 1 to 1. When I talked about this like big devaluation in 2001, then it jumped from like 1 to 1 to like 1 to 4. Today we're about 1 to 1,200 with the US dollar, uh, and it and like inflation is probably even higher than that. It's just like the way like the things work here. They're completely crazy and basically unfathomable to like anyone who lives somewhere else. But that's how it's been forever. I mean, hopefully things change. There's a lot of optimism right now. And back to the way that you were exchanging your dollars for your pesos. Um, Basically, the state controls the exchange, the official exchange rate, and this has just changed. But it has happened in the past. It happened between I think 2011 and 2015. Then it was the controls were back in 2019, if I recall correctly, and they lasted until pretty much now. So basically, what you get is the emergence of this parallel market in which the actual rate, so it's like the free floating rate, can go anywhere at times from like 30% premium to 100% premium to I think like it got like 300% premium now. It sounds sketch, like how it works, but getting these, I guess, like dollars or like pesos to dollars in the parallel market is basically going to either like a guy on the street, or there are also like these like offices downtown that I don't one can call them professional, and they're very safe, but they're clearly off the grid.
Crazy. And then how do you manage that logistically? I mean, like, you must have like a huge wallet. Do you just carry like a shopping bag full of cash, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's definitely not very convenient. So like we can speak about like the daily life, but also what it means to have like savings here in Argentina. So the way that people save in Argentina, there are like two ways, and it varies from like depending on the amount of capital that you have. But it can be either, and I'm generalizing, but this is like pretty good generalization. It's either in real estate if you have the chance to buy a place, or literally just hoarding dollars. So I don't remember the numbers right now, but it's like ridiculously high amount of actual dollars in cash, like dollars bills, that we have in Argentina compared to like anywhere else in the world. And that has to do with the fact that if you actually save in the local currency, you would see this crazy depreciation of your savings. So no one does that. So even if the dollar, like people talk about like inflation on the dollar, which is real, and you very much live with it, and are like the US, like Americans are like coming to realize that how much of a problem it can be. But if you talk with anyone in Argentina and you speak about like 8% inflation, uh, it's like all right, that's like nothing. It's minimal compared to like what we've seen for the past few decades. And from a practical point of view, it's yeah, you. I mean, it's mainly an economy that runs on cash because of tax evasion from like most, I would say, of like SMBs. So you're basically carrying a fat stack of bills in your pocket, which is not really that much money, but that's how it is.
Wow, it's insane. And then, do you feel like there's a emergence of crypto, or a real use case for crypto in Argentina? People really catching on to crypto because of that?
There's been crypto community that, again, like I mean, at that point, I was no longer living in Argentina, but I came to know them over the past few years with the people building Decentraland and like Open Zeppelin. And I'm not familiar with the team at Rootstock. They're building smart contracts on Bitcoin, but they're like some of the OGs. But I think that probably is related to the kind of economy that everyone here like lives with. Now, to like the general population nowadays, I would say that there has been emergence of use of USDT for relatively large transactions. So imagine you're like buying a car, or like you're maybe like buying property. All of these transactions are denominated in dollars. So maybe what used to be done by bringing a briefcase full of cash because you can't make a bank transaction, now it's like some of them are made in USDT mainly.
Gotcha. Super fascinating, man. And you said you grew up obviously in Argentina, a BA, and then you got into a really good university in the US in computer science. Well, talk us a little about your decision or your journey into computer science. Like, is that something that you always wanted to do? Like, why computer science of all the things you could have chosen?
Yeah, so I've always been, I guess, like a massive nerd, and I mean it when I said it. Now that I think it's like fashionable to say it, but basically, my dad was a systems engineer. I got my first, or like the family got the first, I would say, computer that we all share, like back when I was like 2, and I just like remember basically running like commands on like DOS back in the day, and playing like Prince of Persia and like things like that. So it was just like playing around, and I know that I mean, like it doesn't really translate.
Love the game.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. To like, oh, you like programming languages or whatnot. But then when I was a teenager, I started getting a bit more into like programming, playing a bit more around with that. Always like math as well. And I feel that computer science was probably like the best combination of both. It had the theory, but also the pragmatism that I liked about building things. And when I was about to like graduate from high school, I was honestly just like browsing like websites from like the top schools in the U.S. So things like went from like Stanford, Princeton, MIT, and whatnot. And I was actually browsing, looking for PhDs back then, just out of curiosity. I mean, at that point, I was like gonna sign up for college here in Buenos Aires. I didn't really know anyone who went abroad, but then suddenly it was a possibility. Like it was like basically browsing these websites, and they were like talking about scholarships and like international students for college. So after that, I basically called the U.S. Embassy. They gave me a bit more information around the application process, and I started going down that rabbit hole. And after a lot of, I guess, like hours of catching up with what SATs were all about, which are these like standardized tests that anyone who's applying to college in the U.S. needs to take, and reaching out to high school professors to write me letters of recommendation and whatnot. I'm prepping these whole like applications that look very, very differently from how they are here in Buenos Aires. I applied to a few schools. I basically decided, hey, if I'm gonna go all the way to the US, leave my family, who I love very much, and my friends, it would only be for one of the like really good schools. And I was fortunate enough to get admission into one of these. I got a full scholarship, and a year later, I was basically traveling to the East Coast, trying like figuring out like actually without even like being sure if I was gonna like it or not. Before that, I've only been to the US once, to Miami, which is a very different scenario. And with the idea of like, hey, if I actually don't like this, I'll just go back to Buenos Aires, go to Buenos Aires University, which is a great school as well, and call it a day. But yeah, honestly, I never regretted it. It was amazing. I love that experience.
And you must be an absolute genius. Wow, getting a scholarship, and this is what I love about punks, right? I think we get um, all walks of life and talent in the punks community, and I'm really sort of humbled to be even in the punks community as well. So just meeting people like you, super smart, and wow, what a sort of journey, man, and congratulations to you too for that sort of that sort of transition, man. Because I wouldn't imagine like it would have been pretty challenging to get out of Argentina, right? Into a school like that, and so you completely sort of noted out. So you did your college there, and then you moved into a company called Palantir, which I mean I don't know too much about, but they had another punk on who also was from Palantir. I think her name was Natalie, Nat.eth. I think that was her handle. Again, super smart as well. She was a Stanford grad. But I think there was a Peter Thiel company, right? So do you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing at Palantir? Because I think that might be super interesting for people to hear as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, you're correct. It was originally funded by Peter Thiel. He was the chairman of the company early on. I don't think that he was ever involved much on the daily operations, or at least definitely not when I joined. So I joined in 2014. The company was started, I believe, it was like 06 or 07. The kind of work that I did there. So the clients from like Palantir, some of them are within the public sphere, some of them within the private sector. I was mainly focused on clients in the private sector. Some of them were insurance companies, some of them were companies in the financial services. One of them, I think this one is actually public, was Airbus, which is one of the large aircraft manufacturers. And all the projects that I worked, basically what they had in common is that these companies had very large pools of data that they were not really using or like leveraging for their operations. And this can go from optimizing customer churn at one of these companies to identifying the root cause for failure across like aircraft to different like fraud detection models for either like insurance or financial services companies. So basically, I was like a mixture of like a researcher on the machine learning side together with the actual implementation of these systems in production. So it was a lot of fun. I mean, you basically got to work with super interesting data. At that point, I was like pretty much like a fresh college grad, and you get to basically interact with people at the pretty much like C level on these Fortune 50 companies. And it was a lot of responsibility. It was a lot of fun. I think like one thing that is like probably like the one thing that I would note about Palantir, at least like back in the day, it was the quality of the people that work there. I was like very, very fortunate to work with very, very smart people. And I've always really appreciated that with that work and like stuff that I did after as well.
Okay. Oh man, super amazing. And then and then high frequency trading.
Yeah.
What is that? Like, how'd
Yeah.
you get into that?
So I guess like I didn't. So after like leaving Palantir, I was like, okay, like let's see what kind of things I can start like building in crypto. And at the beginning, like I wasn't really sure what it was. I mean, I knew that it was going to be big. I was very excited about the underlying. I like it's like the first thing that like really attracted me to it was the game theory of it, and then how like these like different incentives worked. I couldn't really come up with an idea for like building something on chain. On it, I'm talking about Ethereum at that point, and I was thinking about building a fund that would invest in crypto from a technology slash quantitative angle. Given my background, I thought that was going to be the main fit, but I didn't really have much of a background in investing. As I started looking into different opportunities, different time horizons, I started noticing that, hey, if I look at like holding positions for like months, I cannot get any alpha here. So basically, I cannot get any source of information that is better than just, let's say, investing in like BTC or ETH. And I started basically going to shorter and shorter time horizons. As you go into these like shorter horizons, the actual like problems and what you are trying to like solve like really changes. You're not trying to predict the price of Bitcoin a month from now. What you start like looking at is the structure of how these products are traded across different exchanges. So like I guess I walk through an example. Let's take Bitcoin. Bitcoin is traded across multiple places. You have Coinbase, you have Kraken, and many, many more others. You have Bitcoin Spot, which is basically you're buying or selling the actual Bitcoin, and you also have derivatives like perpetuals, which they track the price of the underlying, but sometimes they get out of whack and whatnot. And you basically all this data and liquidity across like all of these venues. The markets are like pretty good. Like they are efficient to some degree, but you get either someone who's coming into one venue and saying, hey, I just want to buy a lot of Bitcoin, and I want to buy it now. So what that happens is like suddenly the price of Bitcoin in one place will be much higher than in other venues, but that doesn't have to do with the actual price of like the true price of Bitcoin at that single point in time. It has to do with the liquidity and the fragmentation of this market across different places. So there are different kinds of high-frequency trading strategies. Some of them are more focused on the market-making side, which is basically providing orders at all points in time for buying and selling. Some of them are more related to cross-exchange arbitrage, and you're like basically trying to very, very quickly buy low in one venue and sell high at a different one, and basically rinse and repeat these thousands of times a day. We're mainly focused on the former, so basically market making, and we're mainly focused on perpetuals. But basically what we're doing is that if you were probably trading a perpetual either on BitMEX back in the day or after that in Binance or Huobi, at some point in time we're probably on the other side of that trade.
Gotcha. Wow. Mate, I started dabbling in perpetuals. I've got wrecked every single time. It feels like they knew where my stops were, so they were just like, I get all these crazy weeks, and I just got like my position's always liquidated. So I stopped playing with any leverage in the perp space. I think that's a dangerous game for me, but super fascinating. And then so what did you, I guess, make of crypto? So you said you got into crypto around 16, 17, I think, around that time. How did you get in? Like what was your sort of journey into crypto?
Yeah, so I mean, at that point, I remember I was having dinner with a friend, and this friend told me about how like Bitcoin was going up in price. So I think that this was like back in like December 2016, January 2017. So basically, like downloaded Coinbase. At that point, there were only 3 coins. It was Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. And I was like, all right, I'll look into this. And I remember a little about Bitcoin, but not much. So I reread the paper, the white paper, and I'm like, oh, like this is actually like pretty cool. Like nothing, like none of the pieces themselves were novel themselves. It's not like there was like a new necessarily like hashing algorithm or anything of the sorts, or like a breakthrough in distributed systems. But the way they were like all put together, and you had these incentives, and basically solving for a decentralized ledger that can be consistent and not allowed for the double spend problem, was like, all right, like this is actually like very, very interesting. What I can do with it, like I'm still like not sure, but this seems like a pretty cool, like pretty good. Let's call it technology. Again, it's hard to define. Is like, is it technology? Is it a currency? Like what? Like I don't want to get into that discussion, but basically, okay, it's a pretty cool space. It's like a pretty cool solution to like an existing problem. After that, I started reading basically a bit more about Ethereum and what was like coming up, and basically I was excited about, again, like what these like underlying technologies, let's call them, were doing. I wasn't exactly sure how or what I was going to build. I knew that I wanted to start something, and that sounds like kind of silly or cliche, but basically I wanted to like build something on my own. I wasn't sure what it was gonna be, but I knew that I wanted to build something within the space, and that's kind of like after like a few iterations and thinking about, and like I thought a lot about like identity. Like back at that point, I couldn't really come up with something I was like, oh, like this like 10x better than anything out there, like something that truly made sense. And after I don't know, like exploring like a few like different things, decided to end up with like the high frequency trading route, which I just mentioned. But it was a little bit of that journey, how I ended up with it.
And then maybe have a chat about, I guess, your inspiration for Gondi then. I think along that sort of journey, so you went down that high frequency trading route, and then you ended up with Gondi. Yeah, what was the inspiration for Gondi? And maybe if you can explain a little bit about what Gondi actually is.
Yeah, so I guess Gondi, begin with what Gondi is. Gondi is a peer-to-peer NFT lending protocol. We are mainly focused, I guess, like most of the design decisions that we've made were around how can we make this market more efficient. And the first few collections that we focused on, given that is where most of the volume is today, were what one would call the blue chips. So think of like autoglyphs, punks, squiggles, and other art blocks collections. How we got to this. So fast forward to 2021 from 2017 when I started the high frequency trading firm. And I knew that I wanted to do something else. I've been playing around. I knew that it was still going to be within crypto, most likely within DeFi, given that I think it's where I could potentially have an edge. And at that point, I started like playing a little bit around with NFTs. And after iterating on like a few different ideas, some made more sense than others. Back at that point, so this is like about like probably around like July, August 2021, gaming was getting a lot of hype, Axie Infinity and whatnot. and a lot of people were like running these farms, which basically were like people playing Axie somewhere in the world where the cost of living was like pretty low, and salary was like pretty low as well. And suddenly they found themselves, okay, like I can play Axie or like these other games, make some meaningful income. But at the same time, they require like some assets to begin with. So these were like the Axie creatures and whatnot. So together with a friend, Berga, with whom I ended up like starting Gondi, we started running these, I guess like small guild. Basically consisted of like having like some people in different like countries in Latin America playing these games. We would buy the assets. I would start like automating some of these like breeding strategies and what to buy, what to sell. And after going at it for a while and thinking about it, we were like, okay, like maybe there is like something here. We had basically 9 different ideas or something like that within the NFT space. Most of them at some point, or like half of them were like focused on gaming. Some of them were not so much. And after like different iterations and playing around with different things, and actually like as the hype on gaming started like wearing off, I'm still like pretty bullish in the long term, but I think things will take a bit longer than originally anticipated. We also became users in across like other lending platforms, and we thought that a few things could be done differently, in our opinion, better. But I guess like time will tell. And that's how we ended up basically after like different iterations and shipping different things, focusing on actual NFT lending and concretely what we're doing now.
Awesome. I was just curious, what was your first NFT? You remember?
I was just actually going through my OpenSea purchases, and it was this thing called X Consoles. It was back in 2021. There were like these like, it was gonna be this platform that would make games. I remember reading about it, and it was like this guy who used to work at Uniswap. So I'm like, okay, like these guys are probably like pretty legit and whatnot. And he had these mission schedules, like these like tokens that were gonna give you access to games and whatnot. I basically bought one of these consoles. They were like either like PlayStations or like Game Boys or like whatnot. And I'm like, oh, these like pretty cool and whatnot. Like you have like these like stream of like tokens, so like you're generating some like cash flows. And I bought it. I very much like it went to zero. I think like I bought it, let's say, whatever, like 5 years. Sold it at like 0.3 like, a few months later.
Sounds like one of my trades.
Yeah, it didn't really work out, but it was, and then like I bought a lot. I mean, like my OpenSea profile is public, so people can like go and dig. I'm not too proud of like some of the trades that I made. Most of them went to zero, pretty much. But as I started like, I guess like playing with it, yes, it did cost money, but it was also what like then allowed me to like, I don't know, like before like I get into something, I usually like play a little bit with it. I mean, just as like the path to like get into like NFT lending, which is what we're doing today, I didn't wake up one day and like thought about it, oh, NFT lending markets, these are gonna be massive. Let's see how we can like attack this problem. It was like a less, I guess, like linear path. It was like, all right, I got into first NFTs with some kind of utility, which again, like there's a lot to talk about that, and my opinion has changed a lot about it. And then it was okay, like I'm playing with like these like different like protocols that are allowing already like for like lending. And it was only then that I started like seeing some issues. And yeah, like some of the ideas that we came up with were like more novel and were not really like related to like how things were done in the past. But none of them were like really built or like that we came up with in a vacuum.
Yeah, I think when you're describing that time frame, so I think June 21, I think that was right in the mix of the peak euphoria bull, right? So everything was going on a run, everything was on fire. I do remember that sort of stage around gaming, the whole narrative around gaming and metaverse was starting to heat up. I think the back end of that year, I think Facebook announced its Meta, and all the metaverse tokens just went on another run. And so I think at that point in time, like it was probably a really good bet to bet on NFTs, right? In some form or another. But for me at that time, I do remember some of the lending protocols reaching out and just checking whether or not I'd be interested in using the platform. I was really reluctant to do it because they were high valued assets, and you hear all these stories about getting caught up in a whole bunch of smart contract risk and bugs and issues and getting drained. So I just didn't really play with it too much because it was just so early, right? And just didn't want to sort of take the risk. So I would like to sort of see other people do it first and then come back and give me the thumbs up before I sort of dip my sort of toes in. But from your point of view, like, there's a lot of lending NFT sort of platforms that are popping out right now. So I think even Blur's got their own lending sort of platform. I think there's NFT-Fi. There's all these different ones that are sort of popping up. But what do you think it really makes Gondi sort of different from the other sort of lending platforms?
Yeah. So I think each of them has its merits, and we'll see how things play out. For like I would say like the most like similar ones that we're doing are probably like Arcade or NFT-Fi. They came before us. They really paved the way. So I want to like be very explicit. I think they've done like a fantastic job at it, and they continue to do so. I mean, they're still larger than we are as well. But as a user of some of these platforms, I basically run into some issues. So, for instance, I was mainly a lender at that point in time. I don't need to be mainly a lender, actually. And several times, I mean, I was not automating my strategies on lending. They were like fairly like manual. So I would like go on the market, see what was looking for offers, and place what I thought was a competitive offer, but at the same, so like that it was going to be taken, and at the same time that it was going to be an interesting yield. But what happened like many times was like I would wake up and see that a loan that I was willing to underwrite for a better APR, so a lower APR for the borrower, was initiated, and I was basically locked out of that market, which meant that the borrower had worse terms than what he could have gotten. And I was basically sitting on idle capital. So after it didn't really click on day zero. It's not like these happen and suddenly I'm like, okay, like we need to start Gondi. But after like, these like happened several times, I started like noticing like a few other things, also like a few things around like the product itself and the UX that I thought could be done better. We sat down with Berga, and at that point we were like already like iterating on the space, not really within lending, but like doing like other stuff. And we thought that it was worth getting into this specific vertical within NFTs, and more concretely within like the intersection of NFTs and DeFi. So I would say like the first meaningful change that we introduced was this idea of instant refinancing, which basically means that if you are a lender and you come to the market, what you can do is refinance any outstanding loan as long as you're willing to improve the terms. And what I mean by this, so let's say that there's an outstanding loan against a punk for 40 ETH for a year, let's say 20%. And you come to the market and you're like, okay, actually, I'm willing to underwrite this at 15%. What you can do is basically transfer principal plus accrued interest up until that point to the original lender. And you can do this either for the full amount or a fraction of the loan. And from that moment onwards, you become the lender of record, and you're the one who starts accruing interest. So when the borrower comes back and pays back the loan, what they will send you is the principal plus the accrued interest from the beginning of the loan that you paid the original lender, plus the accrued interest that you had from that moment onwards. And we thought this was like pretty cool. In some way, what you get is continuous underwriting as time goes by. And we get a bit more like technical on how these could be modeled. But basically, as a borrower, what you get is the worst possible terms that you will have for the duration of the loan. So if you take out a 20% loan, you know as time goes by, if the price of your NFT goes up, then someone will probably be like, will come to the market and refinance you, and you'll get a lower APR, given that the risk of that loan has gone down. Or also just like by the fact that your loan, let's say that you started a 1-year loan. So when you start your 1-year loan, basically the lender is underwriting 1 year worth of volatility. You don't know where the price is going to be a year from now. But 6 months in, there are only 6 months left with that loan. So assuming everything stays the same, the risk of that loan has gone down. It has gone down more completely with like I guess like proportional to the square root of like the time left. So someone should be willing in a liquid market, in a completely efficient market, to underwrite that at a lower APR. Again, assuming all the rest of the factors constant. So it really changed the dynamics, and we thought that it was a feature that was different enough, and in our opinion, like better enough, that was worth to basically get off with. And then there were like a lot of like other things like collection offers for like our blocks collections, which no one else was supporting at that point, and whatnot, and what I believe is a more user-friendly UX. But I would say that was kind of like the cornerstone on what we started.
Gotcha. Mate, full disclosure as well, not to necessarily just shill Gondi on the pod, but it's a great product. I think we caught up a while back, just having a chat about Gondi, and I think I tried it out with as a lender offering a loan on the Swiggle, and that was pretty seamless. And I think it was a fuzzy, and I've always wanted to get a fuzzy, but the floor price was probably around 14 or 15 at the time, and I could just take over somebody's loan for like 7 or 8, and hoping, that maybe they'd forget about repaying the loan, and I'd end up with a fuzzy. But sure enough, it got paid out. But it was a really clean experience, and I earned sort of 15% interest on my ETH at that time, and in other places I'd be probably earning about sort of 3 or 4%, right? So it was a good way to sort of earn yield. And then most recently, I lent out one of my NFTs, one of my Bored Apes, and this was when Blast just got announced, and I was scrambling around for some capital to really try and degen into the Blast sort of game. And so I put it up, and was able to get some ETH out, and but yeah, so I think it's just been super useful from both perspectives. But what I do like about it, though, is it's sort of set and forget, right? I'm not worrying about the floor price. The loan is the loan for the duration of the loan that was sort of agreed to, and then at the end of the loan, I can decide whether I want to pay it back, or if not, then they just get to keep the NFT, right? I think that was sort of the bet that they sort of placed when they sort of made that. And so really fantastic sort of platform, and not to mention as well, I think I think Punk DAO, Bull Punk Benches also put in a ticket with you guys too. So really, really great to sort of see fantastic products coming out from the punk community, and obviously and continue to sort of build. So I'll ask you another question too. Is like, in terms of your collections that you enable on Gondi, one of the first collections that you had was punks. Like, from your point of view, like, what were you sort of thinking about, collections that you had to sort of white this for Gondi? What were the sort of the prerequisites for that?
Yeah, so we're mainly focused on, so even for the same dynamics within a protocol, you kind of start like focusing either, do you want like short-term loans, do you want to focus mainly on like long-term loans? And that has to do with like the kind of market and more like mainly the business development side on like which are going to be like who you're going to be targeting and whatnot. So it will inform your strategy in one way or another. We were mainly interested in onboarding the collections that were the most stable, that we think that we're going to be around for the foreseeable future, since those are the ones that people would be the most comfortable with underwriting for like longer term. Like, to give an example, if I launch an NFT collection tomorrow, and then it doesn't really matter what happens with the price, but 2 months after that collection was launched, no one will be willing to underwrite 2-year loan on that one, just because you don't have the data, you don't know whether it's going to be around or not. And we have a very strong conviction that some of these collections, and now going back to like Punks, which was one of the main ones that we launched with, they're here to stay. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. Like, I don't like to make predictions on price. I'm really bad at it. I used to say that I'm very confident on what's going to happen in the very long term, so like many years in the future. And back when I was doing high frequency trading, what can happen in the next few milliseconds. In the middle, anything in between, really hard for me to predict. But we know that they're going to be around. And if you look at the price action for the past, like for the amount of time that they've been live, there are some collections that stand out as more stable than others. And that's how we ended up choosing the collections to begin with. I do particularly have like a special, I guess, like affection for like punks, and we can get into that later. But I would say like the rational decision, or like the process to onboard collections and how we decided to launch with this was along those lines.
Gotcha. Bit of stability and track record. That makes a lot of sense. All right. Well, let's switch gears a little bit into punks. When did you first hear about punks?
I can't remember the exact date. It was somewhere at some point in, I would say, like early 2022. And I can't remember who mentioned them. It was probably some tweet. It was probably someone talking about price action and whatnot. I think like most of the things that I've heard about originally came that way. And it honestly took me a long time to really click with me. That's, I think, like with most things that I've done in the past. Like I'm never jumping into it, and I'm trying to change it. I'm building like a better criteria for it. But the first time that I saw them were, I was like, like these, I don't really like them that much. And that has really, really changed over time. Like it doesn't really like matter. Like it doesn't really come down to the price itself. But the first time that I saw them were like, I mean, these are like pixelated, kind of ugly images. I don't know what all the fuss is about. But one way or another, I guess I continue hearing about them and getting more and more information about it. So I guess I started taking them more seriously because of the price action as well, most likely. And I started, I guess, like looking a bit more into the collection, what the traits were, how to like which ones I guess like I like the best. If I were to buy one, which one it would be. And there were like a few things that basically popped out. And actually, to being completely honest, you're a punk. I can't remember now the ID, but I remember like very, very clearly, like I'm that punk for like months and months. So actually, that was like a better timeline of when I actually like started like really taking them like very seriously. But I think it was like 74, 90, like 90, or it was like somewhere in like the mid like 70s. And I'm like, geez, like I'm not sure. I've never really made like a big purchase, and it felt like okay, I'm buying these really as like a consumption good. I was fortunate enough that things had gone well for me, but it still was like a meaningful amount of money. So I never pulled the trigger on that one. But I was like, oh, that punk is very cool, and
Yeah.
and then at some point you bought it. I didn't know who you were, but I'm like, oh, okay, that's all right. And I kind of like just like sat on the sidelines for a while, continued like tracking the price and whatnot. Never really pulled the trigger. And then fast forward to last year, I started looking at them again. And there it was 7335, which I actually stared at for a very long time because remember I said like I move very, very slow. Even though I work in tech, I think like I like to consider myself someone who takes risks and enjoys them. With these things, I just like I move slow. I don't know. Uh, and I think the first time that I saw it was listed at like 130. Then it went to like 200. And I think then it went back to 130 and then to 200. But basically, it was like moving between like these two prices. I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna be spending that much money on this. I'm like, I really, really like it. I really like the combination of trades, but that's just a lot. And one day, I remember seeing that it got sniped for like 60, and it was Punk7335, and I'm like, what happened here? Like it was 130. Now it went down to I think it was like in the 80s or 90s. It went down like a little bit, but one day it got sniped at 60. And basically at that point, after basically a lot of like consideration, I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna pull the trigger. And at that point, we're also considering buying one of the balance sheet of the company of Gondi, and basically reached out to Punk's OTC, and honestly, like a pleasure to work with him, and ended up basically getting to a price I was comfortable with, and ended up buying 7335 as well as Signori Gondi. But that's like a little bit of the story of how I got into.
Amazing. So many things to sort of unpack there, but maybe one that I'd be interested in is you said that you were a little bit skeptical when you first came across CryptoPunks. These look a little ugly. At what point did you go, holy shit, I want one of these now?
I think it was a combination of things. One is that I can't really explain why, but they stopped being ugly. Or like I started like liking how they look. I don't. They were kind of cute and they were like kind of cool, right? I mean, like they were simple, but I like the simplicity of them, and I really like the neat cap. Again, I don't know. I just like I'm not an artist. I can't really explain why, but I like how it looked. Um, I liked a little of what it represented. So it was this OG collection. Most of the people at that point who had punks were people that had been in the space for a while. And even though I would say that I'd been for a little bit, like not for that long, I looked I looked up to like a lot of these people. So I was like, okay, like it's not just like they look cool. I like what they represent, and I like and again, like as an outsider and someone who's just like looking at these like from like Twitter, I know that it's a biased perception, but I just like I like what it represented, and what it represented might just like be like what it represented to me, that would be more specific, not necessarily what it represented to like every single person out there. But I was like, all right, these are things that I would like to be associated with.
What does it represent to you?
So this has changed over time as well, and I it's a very, very heterogeneous group. Like if we're actually talking about like punk holders, but originally what it represented was like, all right, these people, I guess they went back to the core values of like why most of these started around decentralization and like empowerment of the individual. And this has changed a lot, and it will continue to change as it becomes more and more of like, as we people like say, like a store of value and whatnot. That changes. I mean, like Vanek or whoever will be the fund like buying punks, they don't necessarily stand for that. It's mainly a financial decision. They might stand for that as well. Sorry, like I didn't mean to say that, but I think like these like changes over time. But at that point in time, when I started like getting into it, I think it was mainly around that, and it really clicked with me after buying it and started interacting with a lot of the community members and whatnot. It went beyond that, and again, like I said, like it's like a very heterogeneous group. But overall, I came to meet, and I was not really expecting this to be the case, but I came to meet very, very cool people that I now, with some of them, I chat on a daily basis, and it's great.
No, you're right. I think it's a pretty big signal in some ways of your value set. And I think for particularly building an NFT sort of platform as well, you need to find a way to build trust and credibility straight away. And so I think if you didn't have a pump up, I'm not sure if I would have used Gondi, if I'm honest. But I was at a chat, a fireside chat during the week, and I think there was a bunch of students learning about NFTs, and they were just trying to wrap their head around it, because it was full Polkadot, right? So they're trying to build up their sort of ecosystem. But it sort of dawned on me at that point in time is because a lot of them were very skeptical. Is that I think punks and ETH are extremely blessed in the sense that we were able to get somebody like Matt and John, who are both engineers, like on the technical side, and artists. And just to sort of have that blend in creativity to build something like CryptoPunks is really, really special and unique. And I think that's what a lot of blockchains sort of miss in some ways. I think they're great on the tech, but they sort of miss that creative community art sort of element to it. And it's a really hard blend to sort of get right in. And Snowfro is also a testament to that too, right? And also some of the gen artists that sort of are coming out. So I think that whole ecosystem between sort of technologists and artists is a really special and unique blend that we have within that sort of ecosystem. But huge sort of signal in the space. When you're looking at traits, you said you're a fan of knitted cap. I'm obviously a fan of the knitted cap. But like, how are you thinking about, which traits you were sort of looking for? Was it the knitted cap, or was there anything else? Because 7335 is a pretty cool punk. He's got the ever subtle smile and also the eye patch, which I'm a fan of as well, the pirate eye patch. But were you looking at many variations or combinations of traits at that time, or was it just mostly the knitted cap?
I wasn't necessarily completely set on the knitted cap, but I would say that it was a filter, and beyond that, the rest of the traits was really more of like a combination. What really would like stand out to me, like not necessarily, it wasn't necessarily like it has to be a smiley one or it has to have the eye patch. There were like a few things that it just like looks cool, right? I mean, I like the stash as well, like the mustache as well. I like how the sig, even though I'm not a smoker, how it looks in like some of these punks as well. And that's what basically drew me to yours, like originally. With 7335, I think like part of these, like one, like build the story after the fact. It's not necessarily what like led me to it. But after like looking at it, I mean, like, okay, like the smile, I think it's a pretty cool trait to have. Just because of like being like an optimistic, someone who's like an optimist. Sorry, and the eye patch of basically being a pirate and someone like defining or like trying to build something different and better to the status quo. It just like clicked, and well, like we already talked about the need cap. So basically, just it was like the combination of all of those things. And again, I think like the story behind it and like what I'm like telling you now. It's not that it was built before I saw it. I think it was like it's kind of like a feedback loop in which I saw it and I'm like, all right, like this like really clicks. Why is that the case? And basically one comes up with the story. But I think if I'm being completely honest, I think that's how I came to that.
Nice. It's a super clean punk, man, and it's funny how you're interested in 9527 as well, because I was eyeing him off for a while, and I think I was in like the Discord as well, like trying to find out who White Tusker was, and I couldn't get in touch with the guy because at that time, like the floor price was like 50, and so like I paid about four, right? I think I got this guy for about 75, but I just really liked him. But yeah, so it was interesting to hear that you had your Iron 9527 as well. And if money wasn't an issue, what would be your dream punk? Do you think?
Interesting. I do like apes overall. I haven't spent enough time looking at the apes to say this one or that one, to be honest. But if money wasn't an issue, I think probably would be an ape. And for some reason, I like the apes better than the aliens. So it doesn't really come down to like, all right, like what's like the most expensive punk out there? I want that one. But it would definitely be an ape. I do like 3D glasses as well a lot. Like there's I think it's Arnaud Punk that is out there, which is an knitted cap with the 3D glasses and the earring. Uh, it's just I think like price right now at more than I'm like unfortunately like able or like willing to pay. I tried to reach out to him on Twitter, seeing if he would be willing to go down in price. I didn't get a response, but I would say that that's a pretty cool punk as well. But back to the original question, it would probably be an ape. The ape with the 3D glasses. I mean, it's a gem for sure. He does have the cowboy hat as well, which some people love. It just doesn't really click with me. I don't think myself much of like a cowboy. I don't know, maybe because I'm not American. But I the one that Nifty Knot has with the VR and the blue bandana is pretty cool. The one that Beauty has with the purple hat is really cool as well. Probably would come down to like one of those two, but I cannot afford any of those, and I'm pretty sure that the owners are not looking to sell anytime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, the one I love the one with the cowboy in the 3D, the ape. What a crazy combination. I mean, yes, three super rare traits, and for me, maybe being Australian, the cowboy hat really sort of resonates with me. But yeah, that would definitely be on my wish list too. Maybe the one with the hoodie, the ape with the hoodie was pretty clean too. So I love that one.
That's how that's a gem. I forgot about that one, but that has to be up there.
Yeah. And if you look across into the punk community, do you have like a favorite punk or a series of punks that you like tuning into?
I think I was fortunate enough to be able to interact with a good number of like punks in a meaningful way. I would say like more than just like a few like tweet interactions, and a lot of it was because of Gandhi. So I'm sure I will. We got a lot of people for. We're fortunate enough to like get a lot of people on board. You guys across Punk Down and whatnot. I mean for different reasons, but and I really enjoy like chatting with Phantom Scribbler. I don't
Yeah,
know if you
it's
guys,
funny.
he's just like a really funny guy. I think he's very smart. He doesn't take himself too seriously. It's just like someone that I just like really enjoy chatting with, and some of what is his professional career overlaps with some of my hobbies. So that was it's concretely more concretely a sport, and I just don't want to say it, because I don't want to dox him or give another data point. But I really enjoy chatting with him, and he then became a Gandhi user as well and whatnot. Uh, but then I was also fortunate enough again to like interact a lot with Danny with Seed Phrase, and in different ways. But I really enjoy the conversation that I've had with him. I think he always provides like very good insight. He's someone that so he became an advisor and then an investor in Gandhi, but he actually started playing with the platform uh, before even chatting with us. And it was like kind of cool. I mean, like someone who again, like I know that he has built a very expensive or like meaningful collection, but still like willing to go and play with a new product. I mean, that kind of like person. I don't know. Like I respect that a lot. I respect people who like go out and like try new things, play with them. Tony Herrera, also someone that I actually got to meet with him in person during Bright Moments in Buenos Aires. He's the nicest guy. Again, he's involved with Gandhi, but he would really go out of his way to help with the product. and introduced me to people who then became either investors or users, and these kind of just like willingness to help. And this is like really like a pattern. So like, and now I'm like talking about Tony, but I think it's really a like common factor with everyone that we've been working with, to be honest, like especially within the punk community. I don't want to be like name dropping, but like I really mean it. I don't know, like uh, the way that we actually got in touch with Seed Phrase was through another punk holder, G Funk, and he introduced us to him without really having. It's just like out of like pure, I would say, like generosity. And this is like really, I don't know, like the same goes to like some like other introductions that he's made. Tony with like I don't know, like Dan Polko, and at some point probably the way that I got introduced to you. I was like a little bit hesitant to like name like I feel like who I was gonna name because it really had like so positive interactions with like many of them that, and I know that I'm forgetting some of them. But I don't. These are like relationships that don't go like that far back in time. Again, like I met most of them, well, all of them, only in the past maybe like 5 months. Definitely not more than that. And I really value these relationships. I mean, there is a professional aspect, but I think it goes beyond that.
Yeah, absolutely. And but it's just similar to you as well. It's kind of mind blowing in some ways at the level of access punks have, right? I think as soon as you're sort of in and you start meeting a few people, in most punks are quite generous with the networks, provided that you're not a grifter and you know they sort of does the sort of vetting. But as soon as you're sort of in and you know you've built that reputation and they're doing something cool. I think most punks are very, very generous with their time and they're and opening up doorways for you where they can, right? So really good to sort of hear you sort of mention those names because I'm a big fan of Phantom, Tony Herrera. Haven't met Denny Seafraze yet, but yeah, some amazing punks that you sort of mentioned as well.
Once, just because I just realized that I forgot someone, and I remember who introduced us. It was Ark, who's also within. I think it was Arcadius.
Arcadius, yeah, of course. He's a legend. I love Ark. Yeah, such a great guy.
I knew I was gonna forget you, and and not because of a matter of like how impactful like he has been or not. It's just like maybe I haven't chatted with him in the past few weeks. Well, I had with like the other people that I mentioned, so it really is like recency bias what I'm having.
Ark is such a amazing human, man, and he's super smart, obviously. And I think that's probably why you guys get along because he like loves nerding out on code and tech and everything else as well. So super lovely guy. Yeah, for sure. And then for you, like, what does punk culture mean to you? Like, how would you describe punk culture?
For me, and again, like these will be probably biased, but the people that I've interacted with the most, I think it's a group that has been in different ways, but like quite successful at what they are doing. And it would be something very different from each person. Some might be an artist, some might be a technologist, some might be purely a business person. But I think it's a combination of that and like going back to what you said, and I was like talking about is like generosity and just like how open they were to helping out and this idea of like I don't know, like I would travel to a new city and I would basically ask, hey, is there like a punk group in this city? And I asked this in like I spent some time in London as well, apart from like New York and Buenos Aires, and that's how I got to meet some people there as well. And my next trip will be to Paris. The first thing that I'll ask is like, hey, is there like a punks community group here? And so I haven't found that. It's not that I don't have an ape, so I don't know if that happens also within that group. But I have a few other NFTs, and I don't think I've seen that happening with any other collection. And I don't think it really comes down to the price of it. Honestly, I don't know how exactly it started. I'm probably someone who has been part of it would be able to answer this. Maybe someone who was a claimer or someone who's been around for much longer than I have. But this is like one of the things like really stood out. Like I go to like a new city and there's a group and there's a Telegram in which you can reach out and people will surely like to meet and it's great. You don't really see that in other collections, or it's not like, oh, like I'm like a big like whatever like these like ERC20 holder or whatever like anything like that. I think it's like pretty unique to punks. I think that's like what stands out.
Yeah, absolutely, and I can speak on that. Well, I've got an 8, but admittedly, I'm probably not as active in there as what I am in punks. But yeah, the vibe's definitely different, right? I think when you sort of mention the word generous, that definitely sort of comes up to mind. I mean, I had Ozark visit over the Christmas break as well, and went for a round of golf. And he's such a super generous and awesome guy too. So, and it's the strange thing and the cool thing as well is like, we converse online digitally on Discords and Telegrams, but then we sort of meet in real life. And I met Phantom in Korea as well, and it just feels like you've known them for forever, right? They're just like long lost friends in some ways, which is kind of nice. Um, yeah, and then if you if you were looking at I guess the V1 punks, do you have a view on them for you?
Yeah. So again, I haven't been around for that long within the community. Uh, the way that I see it is that, I mean, these like are like social contracts. I mean, like, why punks are valuable. I mean, there's the history behind it, but at the end of the day, it was the owners and the perception of the rest what really made them what they are today. Because you didn't see these happening with like CryptoKitties, and I saw that as well. Maybe like at that point, I was actually more familiar with when they came up with breeding within CryptoKitties and whatnot, because I had a few friends playing with it. So I definitely think that it really comes down to a social contract, and from what my understanding is, the main argument for V1 punks is that, hey, these were the original contract. Uh, they have this historical value, and that's the main claim to relevance, or like why they might be relevant. And I think those are valid points, but at the end of the day, I think it really comes down to what, like, I guess, like, as a group. And again, it's circular, and what I think will probably influence with like other people think, and vice versa. But if someone says CryptoPunks, the first things that comes to mind is, and I don't like to call them V2, but it's like whatever, what people would call V2, not V1s. So I don't have anything against V1s. And in some way, I guess like the market reflects what they are. And again, price is just like one dimension on how one can evaluate these collections. But they're not worth zero. I don't think they're worth zero, and clearly the market doesn't think that either. Now, do I think that they are and have to be the main ones? I personally don't, or like I don't see like an argument, like a bulletproof argument that says, "Hey, it's the V1s," and if all comes down to history, and that's why these collections are valuable, then it should be the V1s that are more valuable than the V2s. I don't see it that way. At least today, the market doesn't see it that way either. But I mean, there's these like tribalism and whatnot, but like I don't have anything against it. It's not like I'm like trying to like go around and like show that they're.
Yeah. No, I think you summarize it quite well. And I'm probably in your camp too. Like I like the V1s. The V1 punk community have some pretty good people in there too. So, but similar to you, I do believe it's in some ways the social contract, as you call it, is what builds a community. And there's a reason why there's nowadays strong community behind Mooncats and Ether Rocks, and there's something fundamentally different about them in terms of why punks are sort of still around, and it's the community that's built the reputation that we sort of have, right? So sort of agree with you on that. What about the Yuga acquisition? How do you feel about punks being owned by Yuga?
Yeah, so I didn't have a punk when the acquisition happened. I mean, like, I read about the news, I follow it to some degree, uh, but I like what they've done so far, which I guess it's not much on the utility side. And again, like, we could probably spend like a full podcast on this, but the one thing that like I was one of the reasons why I was like very comfortable like buying punks and spending like this much money on a single asset was that there's no expectations of future, I guess, like, deliverables from anyone. Like, I don't expect uh, either Yuga or like within, or like Larva within Yuga to assign some utility to it. I don't, and actually, I don't want that to be the case, because I think that can potentially change the perception of other people and what like punks are. And that's why I have a little bit of like mixed feelings, but like when there are like a lot of like derivatives projects coming out and like, hey, how can we like add like cash flows to like punks and whatnot? And I'm like, look, I don't want any of that. Like I want punks to remain the way that they are today, utility less, let's say. And
Yeah.
I guess acquisition of Yuga versus like something that is like completely out there in the open, and no one in some way like owns, poses a risk in some way like down the line. So far, I haven't seen any evidence. In fact, like quite the opposite. Like I know like I've interacted quite a bit with Quit, who's a developer within the Yuga ecosystem, and he's great. I mean, he helped us actually. He also like was one of the auditors for our contract. So I had like a few conversations with him. I think it's amazing what they're doing right now with the new RUP Punk's contract. It's also great. I mean, I think like those are the kind of things that I think could be valuable. Or like again, if they're not there, I think the world will continue and Punks will continue to stand on its own. But I guess like the summary would be, I hope they don't try to bring any utility to it, and they just like leave them as they are, and they limit like their everything that they do, maybe around like, all right, like build like helping with the community, but things that are like not that they're nice to have but not required.
Yeah, absolutely. Punks are a finished product, and I think that's a good thing too. When people are buying in, we're not sort of coming in and sort of saying we want X, Y, and Z. When. As a finished product, you get what you buy. So, which is also a nice way. And I guess final question of the show, to an extent. This has been a super fun conversation. But if you could pass on a message to the next owner of Punk7335, what would you like to say to them?
That I hope it. Again, I don't like to like be attached to material things, and I just like I naturally am in general not, or like I kind of like outgrow them in some way, for better or worse. But the punk itself is probably, or like Peace Punk in particular, 7335, which again, like I don't have any intention of like selling anytime soon. I like the kind of emotions that I guess like it generates in me. So again, like going back to this idea of like being an optimist or just like smiling and be happy, and again like being on the pirate side. And again, it might be a cliche and whatnot, and it might be silly. But I hope that whoever owns it next has either these kind of feelings or other feelings, but hopefully they're as positive as mine are, and that he, she, they, like this other person, ends up enjoying it as much as I've been enjoying having it.
Lovely, nice. 0xn, this has been a super fun conversation, dude, and thank you so much for joining PunkCast. Any sort of final closing comments on your side, and what's the best way for people to find you?
Yeah, I'm very responsive on Twitter and Discord as well, so anyone can reach out to me there. I don't post very much, but I am there every day. And yeah, just like thank you again for having me, and honestly for just like having the podcast. I think it's a great way to know what other punks are up to. These are the kind of things, and again, we don't really need like a UA and whatnot, but I think they're like are very valuable, and it all comes down to the community and the people who are part of it.
Mate, thank you so much, and I'd love to come visit Buenos Aires one day and maybe grab a nice steak at Don Julio's and see if I can say some JL Alberto with you.
I hope you can make the trip. It's far, but I would love to host you, and it would certainly be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Guys, that wraps up an episode of PunkCast for the week, and we'll be back next week with another amazing punk. Bye for now.